Monero is one of the most private cryptocurrencies out there. Unlike most cryptocurrencies, it hides a ton of information about your transaction and who you are from the network. So instead of everything being visible on a public blockchain, everything is hidden, allowing you to make completely anonymous payments completely by default. It's designed with privacy in mind, and you can really use it and get going without too many privacy drawbacks. That being said, there is a way to improve your privacy when you're using Monero, and that is by running a Monero node. Now, a local Monero node is basically a full copy of the Monero blockchain that runs on your computer, and it stores all of the information and it works in the background to verify all the transactions on the network and allow you to interact with the network safely. Usually when you download a Monero wallet, it will connect to a remote public node hosted by somebody on the internet. And that works fine for basic privacy needs, but when you use a remote node, the operator of that node does get some information about you, such as your network IP information, for example, every time you connect to the node with your wallet or make a transaction, which does detract from the privacy that Monero gives you just a little bit. What running your own node locally does is keep all of that information local on your computer and hidden from the rest of the network. And it also adds to the decentralization of the network and increases the privacy of people using Monero overall. So not only does it improve your privacy, but it also improves the privacy of other Monero users and the network as a whole. So if you're a regular Monero user, this is almost a no-brainer to run on your device. The only requirement that running a Monero node locally really has is it requires a lot of storage space. That's because it stores an entire copy of the Monero blockchain on your computer. Right now, to run a full node, you need around 150 gigabytes of storage space, and that got me thinking. I have a network attached storage device, a Synology NAS that basically sits around all day. It's always on, and it has a lot of free space left over that I'm not using yet. So I could probably put that to good use by running a Monero node locally and keeping all of my transactions safe while contributing to the network as a whole. Devices like a Synology NAS are pretty perfect for this situation because unlike Monero mining, for example, running a local Monero node doesn't require a lot of horsepower in the CPU department, for example. Luckily, there is a super easy way to get this going on a Synology NAS using the built-in Container Manager app. First thing that you'll need to do, if you haven't already, on your Synology NAS is open the Package Manager and find Container Manager. It's going to be at the bottom under the open source section. I already have it installed, but if you don't have it installed yet, just click on it and click Install to get it going. Compatibility with Container Manager is going to depend on your Synology NAS. Some low-end Synology NAS devices are not going to be compatible with Container Manager, and you won't be able to run a Monero node on those devices. So if you don't see Container Manager or Docker here, it's not going to work for you. But if you do, just get that installed. It's a pretty simple process. I already have it installed, so I'm just going to close out of this. And then the other thing that we'll have to do to set up is just create a few folders and files. So we're going to open File Station here, and you're going to find a folder that you want to keep the Monero blockchain in. Like I said, it's pretty sizable. I keep all of my containers in a Docker shared folder on my NAS, and then I'll just create a new folder in there, call it Monero D, which is the name of the Monero blockchain software. Hit OK, and we'll have that. And then inside the Monero D folder, we have to make one more folder and call it Bit Monero. And that is where the data will be stored. And that's pretty much all we need for this initial setup here. So we can go ahead and close File Station. And then we're going to open Container Manager. Container Manager is new in Synology DSM-7. It replaces the old Docker app, and one really nice thing about it is it lets you create projects using standard Docker Compose files super easily to basically do this whole setup by just pasting in a simple configuration file, which is super nice. It'll save a lot of time in the setup. So we're going to go to the Project tab here, and we're going to hit Create. And we're going to call the project name, again, I'll call it Monero D. We are going to hit Set Path here, and then under wherever you created your Monero D folder, just click on the Monero D folder and then hit Select. and then we are going to change source from upload to create, and it'll give you a text box right here. And now what you're going to do is go to this gist that I've created here. There's going to be a link in the description below, so click on that. And we're going to copy all of this right here, copy it, and then we're going to paste it right there like that. And before we hit next, there's a couple decisions that you'll have to make. These things are commented out, so if you don't do anything, they won't apply, but there's two things that you can change if you want. So the first one is public node, and basically you're going to delete this little pound sign here if you want to run a public node on your Synology NAS. That means that your node on your NAS will be advertised to basically the internet, so any other Monero user can connect their wallet to it and use your node to connect to the Monero network. So if you really want to contribute, it's definitely an option you can do. I'm going to leave it commented because for my purposes, I mainly just want to have a node that I will use for my own purposes, but not necessarily share with everyone else. And if you don't have experience running public network infrastructure, or if you have a slow internet connection, for example, I would probably recommend leaving that as is and not uncommenting it. But if you do want to run a public node, that's an option. It's very simple to do so. The other thing that you can uncomment is this prune blockchain option. And what that will do is basically store a condensed version of the blockchain and save some storage space. So it cuts your storage needs in about half from what I've seen, by only storing certain parts of each transaction rather than the full transaction. This is probably fine and won't impact your privacy at all. However, if you have the storage space, it is better for the network overall as far as decentralization goes to not use the pruned version and just keep a full copy of the blockchain. And in my case, I have a lot of free storage space available, so it's not really an issue for me. So I'm going to leave it commented. Again, I'm not going to change that. But if you are low on storage space, or if you don't want to contribute too much of your NAS storage to this project while still running a full node, you can just uncomment that and have a pruned blockchain by deleting that pound sign again. And now I'll go over what this configuration file that we just pasted in actually does. What this is going to do is create a Monero D container in Docker that runs on your Synology NAS. And what a Docker container is it's kind of like a very lightweight virtual machine. It's pretty much separated from the rest of your NAS, and it just runs a single program. In this case, it runs this simple Monero D image that's created by Seth Simmons. Seth Simmons, if you don't know, is also known as Seth for Privacy. He's a creator in the Monero cryptocurrency space, and he created this Docker container that lets us set this up super easily. So it's a really good project. It is open source on his GitHub account, and I'll have a link if you want to inspect like the source code of this Docker file to see what you're running on your NAS. But it's pretty much just runs the basic Monero D software in Docker form and nothing else too special, which is why we're using it. This next line sets the user ID. And this is actually important that you make sure these numbers here, 1026 and 100, are correct. These numbers represent the user on your Synology NAS that this software is going to run as. If you have a Synology NAS and you're the only user on it, you set it up brand new and you've never changed your user settings or anything like that, your user ID is almost certainly 1026 and your group ID is almost certainly 100. But a way that you can check what yours is by connecting to your NAS via SSH. So you'll have to open Control Panel on your NAS, click on Terminal here, and then enable the SSH service and hit Apply. And once you do that, you can open any command prompt on your computer, SSH in as your user, which I'll do now. Enter your password, and then just type ID. And you'll see right here, UID 1026 for mine, and 100 for my group ID. If you have multiple users on your NAS or you're not the first user, you'll definitely want to go through this step and make sure that your UID is correct, because it might be something other than 1026, like 1027 or some other number. But just copy this UID number and this GID number and go back to the container manager and replace these numbers there if they are different for you. This next line basically makes the container always run in the background unless you turn it off. So if it crashes for some reason, it's going to restart automatically. This volumes thing is where we set the blockchain storage location. So if you remember from before, we created that Bitmonero folder, and this says to use the Bitmonero folder that's inside the path that you set earlier to store the blockchain, basically. Next, this is going to open 2 ports on your Synology NAS. This port is for connecting to other Monero nodes, and this is the port that you're going to use when you connect a wallet to this Monero node. And we'll go over the ports later on in this video. And the rest of these settings, we went over the public node setting before and the prune blockchain setting before. These just basically configure the network according to what we have set above. So pretty simple overall. And once we have all of that set and the UID is correct, we can hit next here. We skip this. If you see this page, just hit next again, and then say start the project once it is created. It's going to take a second to download the Monero D image, and then we should see in a moment, it'll say that it started. Container started, exit code 0. So that means everything worked correctly. We can close that. And if we look at our list here, we can click on Monero D and see that it is running in the background. And in fact, here, let me close out a control panel here. If we open FileStation again and look at the Bitmonero folder, we should see that it's started to create files to store the blockchain. And that's literally all you need to do. There's nothing special beyond that. It's just running in the background and you can connect to it. There are 2 other things that you should do that I can't really cover in this guide because it's going to depend on your network configuration, but you do have to go into your router and port forward port 18080 on your router to your Synology NAS. That is going to allow other Monero nodes to connect to yours and really get your node added to the full network. If you don't port forward that port, your Monero node is still going to work, but it will only be able to connect to other nodes that have port forwarded. It's not going to be fully a part of the network. But if you don't port forward it and you only use it in your own wallet, it is still going to protect your privacy once this gets going. The other thing that you might want to do is port forward port 18089, especially if you've enabled the public node option. This is the port that you actually use to connect your wallet to this node. So it will have to be accessible if you want to access your node outside the network. If you don't want to access your node on your public IP address, or if you don't have a public IP address on your router, for example, there are other ways to connect to this port without port forwarding. So you can always connect to this port on your Synology NAS within your local network by just connecting to your internal IP address. You can use an app like Tailscale, which is what I use personally, and I just have that installed here on my NAS where I can connect to this IP address from any of my Tailscale devices, and I could connect to that IP address in this port in my wallet on any of my other devices to connect to this node. There is also the option to connect to this node via the Tor network. And if you want to do that, all that involves is adding a second Tor container in Docker here. So we can actually go through and set that up quick. What we'll do is we'll stop this project here and wait for it to stop. And once it's stopped, hit close. And then we can go back to this gist and copy this Tor configuration down here. Copy that and paste that at the bottom here. And we'll just have to delete all of these commented out things really quick. And what this does is it'll run a Tor hidden service that connects to this port, and then you'll be able to access it on the Tor network. One thing that we have to do before we get this Tor container going is go back to File Station here. Go back to that Monero D folder that we created before, and you're just going to have to create a folder called Tor keys. And you'll have to do that before you start again. Once that Tor keys folder is created, we can go back to Container Manager with this new configuration added here and click Save. And then click Build and Start the project, hit OK, and this will restart everything with Tor running as well. And then I'll show you how to connect to it via Tor. Once that's finished, we can hit Close here. And we can see both our Monero D container and our Tor container are running now. If we go back to the Monero D folder on our NAS, we can click on Tor keys, Monero D, and you'll see a file named hostname here. Right click that, download it. I'll just save it to my downloads, and then open this up with any text editor, and you'll see your onion address. Now, if you go to this onion address in Tor browser, just to test this out, Tor browser, you should be able to type this in. Type in port 18089/getinfo and hit enter. Connect to Tor here. And in a moment, you will see information about your Tor node. So that means that this Tor node is now accessible, and you can use this onion address and IP in your wallet if your wallet can connect to Tor to access your Monero node without port forwarding this port at all, because I haven't done any port forwarding setup yet, and it's all working. So setting that up was all pretty simple, right? The last thing that I'll show you how to do is connect to this Monero node in the Monero wallet. I'm going to show you how to do it in the official Monero GUI wallet for desktop here, which I'll set up. We're going to set it up in simple mode right now, and then I'll show you how to change the settings in there later, because we don't want to run a full node on this device. I'm setting up the Monero wallet on this computer for the first time, so I'm just doing the initial setup. But if you already have a wallet, you won't have to worry about any of this. Setting up a fake wallet on this computer. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna assume you already have a wallet, probably, and you'll be on a screen like this once you open your wallet GUI. Once you have your wallet opened, you're gonna have to check whether you're in simple mode. And you do this by going to Settings and checking under the Info tab here. If it says simple mode here, what you're gonna need to do is go to the Wallet tab and hit Close this wallet, and then on this screen hit Change Wallet Mode. And you'll have to change this to Advanced Mode here before opening your wallet file again and getting back into here. Once you're in advanced mode, you can hit Settings here, and there will be a Node tab now. Click on that and click Remote Node, and we're gonna stop the local node if it asks, because we don't want anything downloaded to the computer here. Click Add Remote Node, and now we're gonna enter the IP address of your Synology NAS. So in my case, I'll enter the Tailscale IP address that I have set up, but you can enter the local IP address or whatever else you've set up. And then for the port, you're gonna enter 18089. Click OK, and you should see it show up in the list here. Just click on your IP address here to connect to it, and you will see that it is going to start synchronizing. Now, I just set up this node. It doesn't have the full blockchain downloaded yet, so you can see that it's still waiting for the node to sync, but once that finishes, it should show up as connected. And that's pretty much all you have to do to add the Synology node that you've just created to pretty much any Monero wallet. If your computer or your Monero wallet can connect through Tor, the other thing that you can do is enter that onion address from earlier, and then the same port, and use that, and you can connect to that. I don't have native Tor connections set up, so I won't be able to use that, but in any wallet that you do have a Tor connection available, you can do that as well. and that's an easy way to access your node outside of your network without port forwarding. And that's pretty much the whole process to get a Monero node running on your Synology NAS. This will pretty much just run in the background for a while until it downloads the entire blockchain, and then once it finishes, you'll be able to use this node to conduct all of your transactions using Monero completely privately. This is the most private way to use the network, and definitely recommended if you're really into the idea of making the most private payments possible. If this video helped you out, be sure to get subscribed to my channel. If you run into any issues or if you have any questions, definitely leave a comment below. And otherwise, check out some of my other videos if you'd like. I will see you all in my next video.